Let's get rolling.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Cool. Awesome. So I'm excited here to have on as our first guest here, Florida man himself, State Farm Assassin.
Look out, Big Red.
So, and you're doing us a favor here because you've got a flight to catch on to this freezing cold here in about, I don't know, what, 2 hours?
2 hours.
Appreciate it.
Thankfully, I think it was negative 21 this morning, real feel. So,
Yeah.
I think I'm going back to about like 60 degrees.
I would guess
Nice little 80-degree swing.
65 out there. You literally picked the three coldest days of the year.
Yeah, I paid to be in this. That's what's most messed up. So,
Awesome. I appreciate you hopping on. Obviously, I do that Florida man little thing out there because you are the adventurer in the family. For those who don't know, this is Adam Budron. He's my little brother, the littlest of brothers. No, not really, but about what, 2 years ago now, you left the nest. As you can see behind us, we've got the Illinois and Wisconsin states. That's kind of our home base. We're coming to you live from the mothership of Superior Roofing. But we've also added that third state over there in Florida, and that's your dojo. You've been running that now for 2 years. Obviously, that's a location that a lot of roofers are drawn to. They're allured by it, but it's a siren call for a lot. You know, they venture down thinking it's big money, and they come back to their spend.
yeah.
So I guess you could kick us off by telling us a little bit about that journey down, what it's been like to get established down there, kind of where you guys were at.
Yeah. So this was post Hurricane Ian, and I got to give a shout out to one of my buddies, Matt Nelson. He had reached out to me. So probably like 2 days after Ian, and he said, "Hey man, like this hurricane, one of the craziest ones in history, Florida history. Let's ride down." And Matt had worked a couple different hurricanes, so he was a little more savvy to how that all worked. I had never worked a hurricane before. I've always done my exterior work in the Midwest, Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, Indiana. So I was kind of back and forth on the idea. I was busy enough up here, had plenty on my plate. Sure enough, sat, thought on it, and I said, what the hell, let's ride down, check it out. So we, packed up, we drove down and we got down there, and I was in awe. I'd never seen anything like it. It looked like a war zone, just every house, roof ripped apart, garbage, debris stacked head high in front of people's, in the front yard of people's homes, all the way up and down the street. So after that, and we had gone down with the intentions of potentially just targeting a bunch of roofs. And so that's where it kind of started. And then we came back, and I was like, yeah, I think this is the play. I think, we had always talked potentially about a Florida branch. It was in the cards, but, always kind of in the back of the mind. And this kind of propelled that to the forefront. And sure enough, we pulled the trigger. I went down. We got a little office and just tried to start getting our ducks in a row. And for anyone that's done Florida roofing or is in the industry down there knows it's not easy to get set up in Florida. There's a lot of hoops you got to jump through before Florida will let you do anything. So yeah, it was a little bit of a process. And yeah, I mean, that was the beginning of Superior Built Roofing. Was just kind of, it just happened by chance, wasn't really orchestrated like probably a lot of people thought it was. So but yeah, that's the origins of how Superior Built Roofing initially got established down in Cape Coral, Florida.
And what would you say, based on your experience, is the biggest misconception folks would have about getting involved in the Florida market?
I think everyone, the roofing industry primarily is insurance scattered across the country, and everyone wants insurance work, wants the insurance proceeds. We know those numbers are better than retail settings. And I think everyone just assumes it's a hurricane, once roof's ripped off, you're going to go down and just get endless insurance work. And that whole landscape's changed. Every hurricane seems to change the landscape a little bit more. And insurance numbers just aren't really a thing down there because of various factors such as the policies changing, higher deductibles, insurance companies just flat out not paying out or going belly up in the midst of a hurricane. So everyone comes down thinking you're going to go scoop up more insurance work than you could ever dream of. And that was probably the biggest misconception when I got down there. it was just a straight retail market. If you didn't hop in the retail game and you tried to just work claims and get people to sign these contingencies and or directions of pays, you fell behind really quick. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions about the Florida market is these numbers are not what people think. You come down and it's actually pretty competitive market.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me for the race side of things, you should come down here. There's literally a different lettered truck on every street corner. There's costumes everywhere. I haven't taken you up on that yet, but we are planning to come down.
Yeah.
I think in March here.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, let's also talk about, I mean, it was a challenge, I'm sure, kind of getting oriented to that. And again, it not being what everyone expects it to be, but you guys have really kind of taken off here in the last year. We're talking about 300% growth while you're on pace to hit 3 million your second year. Is that right?
We did a little over 3 million. Our second year one was definitely it was the learning stage, learning new market, new roofing systems. We came from primarily just doing asphalt roofing up in the Midwest. We did a lot of flat roofing, but as far as the sloped roofing goes, we were starting to do a lot of standing seam, stone coated steel, concrete tile. So year one is like, all right, I got to learn how to build these roofs, how to bid them, how to sell them, how to build them, everything that was involved. And, I've been in the industry for quite a long time. So
let's say we grew up, Superior Roofing was like our big brother. His office was across the hall from our bedroom.
It was, yeah.
I've literally been in this our whole life.
I think we were on our first roofs at like 15, so I mean, roofing is like second nature to us. It doesn't take me long to pick up on new roofing systems and all that, luckily. So yeah, year one was like, how do you bid this work? What price do you come in at? The build process, the permitting process. I'd say that's a big sleeper for a lot of companies. You get there and find out how much of a nightmare the permitting process is, especially right after a hurricane. So all those things, we had a good year for being the first year and learning as we go and maintaining a great reputation. After year one, we're 5 out of 5 on Google. So that was not easy. It took a lot of exerted effort to make sure that we were doing all the right things as we learned. And luckily, carrying that principle and that standard from how we operate here in Illinois, carrying that down over, that just steamrolled into how we do business down there. So, yeah, I would say, that was the toughest part about year one. And then after that, year two was just like, all right, it's time to go. We had everything figured out. We had hired people, put them in the right place, had some good systems and some processes. And yeah, we had a 300% growth from year one to year two. We did around $1 million in it wasn't even a full year really, because it took us about 2 to 3 months to get fully going once we got down there. And then the full year two, we did 3 million. So a little over 3 million.
And as you alluded to, like, yeah, we've been around this for a long time. Obviously, we have an established business up here in the Chicago area. And you talk about taking some of those principles down, obviously the way that you treat customers and prioritize the reputation. But you also kind of do things a little bit differently, I would say, than kind of the way the home base has always operated. One of the first things you did was hire a GM. Shout out to Nathan. And Nathan, always hit me with those software requests. Hey, I need you to be able to do this.
He's not afraid to tell you what he thinks, good. And now, bless him, I mean, that was instrumental. And when I talk about putting the right people in the right place, I couldn't have done it without him for sure. It was figuring out what my strengths were and where I thrived and letting me focus on that and then filling the holes from there, and I think that's where me and Nathan worked side by side. We're a perfect fit in those regards. And, starting a new operation versus an operation that's been in business for about 27 years, you're building from the ground up, So you have a vision, you have an idea on how you want to build something. It's a little bit of trial and error, but once things start falling into place, it's just continuing with that system and process and that ideology of hiring the right people in the right place and everyone staying in their lane. And I'd say that's been instrumental in our growth, But yeah, having a good GM as an owner, I think is instrumental for anyone. And we're a testament that no matter what size you are, you can still start, with personnel like that. You could figure out what kind of payment incentive plan you want to go with. And I think you can tailor one to no matter what size company you are. And as you grow, that can change. But, trying to wear all the hats, even out the gate is really tough, you know?
Yeah.
And that, go ahead.
Well, and I'll just say, because I talk to contractors, roofing companies all over the country, like that's, I'm talking to hundreds a year. And I think this is one of the biggest thresholds for folks to get through, because you kind of build that habits when you're at that stage, because you're so used to like, I'm the one, I can trust myself to do everything right. But how can I know I can trust somebody else to do things just as well as I would? And so it's the letting go of the reins that's a real struggle to get over. But again, this is an example here. It's like, you just went for it. You found somebody, first of all, that shared the same standards as you do, right? Somebody who you could trust to care as much. And then you let him do his thing in the way he does it. That allowed you to do your thing. But I think that's just one of the biggest things holding folks back, is just the faith to be able to just take that leap and let folks do their thing.
And I knew like that's what I wanted out the gate. And I will say for the first 6 months of that operation down there, I did pretty much wear all the hats, because it was like, again, I was figuring out the market and many other factors, and getting set up. And of that 6 months, I was managing a sales team of 10 guys. I was playing the production role, helping the front office out with paperwork, permitting, figuring all that stuff out, handling marketing, all that stuff. And, basically what you have to do to get a branch up and running. But I knew through that whole time period, as I was doing that, I was on the lookout for the perfect person to be that GM, because it's not sustainable. You burn yourself out as a human being. And at 6 months of that, we're building, two roofs a day for a while. And by the time you're doing all that, running production, quality control, 2 roofs a day on top, and running every other aspect of the business, there's not much left in the tank at the end of the day, and you wake up and you're shackled, every second, every breath of your day has to be to the business. And, we had a good first year, but that's not how I wanted to proceed business, wanted to get the right people there. And sure enough, my current general manager, Nathan, was actually working with a public adjuster that we kind of been working alongside with down there as we were getting going. He was his executive assistant, and then he came on and started selling for us part-time. And he was in a transitional period where, he didn't quite know what he wanted to do after his event with the PA. And, after sitting down, talking with him, it was kind of an unexpected interview, unintentional interview. And I was like, I think it's my guy, Talks got a little more serious. We tailored put an offer together, and the rest is history. And he's been my GM since, and instrumental in that process. But from there, delegating and figure out what he's going to handle, what I was going to handle. And then, hiring very strategically from there, finding out, okay, we're here. Now, what do we need to for our next phase of growth? Right. Whether that was operations, marketing, office manager, and putting very detailed ads out there, very specified roles for what we need from you to come in and help Superior grow. One of my favorite questions in our interviews is always like, how can you contribute to our growth here? You applied for the position, you see what we're looking for, and how can you, add to the growth here? What do you bring to what do you bring to the table? This is our trajectory right now. This is where the company's going. And we're looking for people that are going to help continue that trajectory, And it's interesting the answers you get. Get some really good ones, you get some really bad of them. Yeah. The interview process is fun. You meet a lot of people, and you leave with some funny stories, and you meet some very unique and cool people. Yeah. In that way also.
So with the podcast, our last couple episodes have been talking about this book that I recommended to you, 10X is Easier Than 2X. It was a book that was recommended to me by a consultant client of mine, and I just started listening to it just to kind of see where his mind was at. Yeah. And ultimately I was, wow, I feel fully transformed through this book. Like everything that it said for me as a founder was in a similar position to that 6-month stretch where it's like, I've been wearing all the hats, pushing everything forward. A lot of it resonated with me. And also I mentioned to you, like I thought of you a lot in listening to the book, because I was like, wow, it's such a different way of thinking, and it's different than the way that most people approach business and life. There's one person who this reminds me of, who I really feel embodies this in a lot of ways, and it was you. So, although you were trying to duck us for a few times on the podcast, I'm like, no, before you get on that plane, we're going to get in here. We're going to talk about
This is not true. Okay, listen to this.
But yeah, so I think a lot of the things you just talked about there, right, resonate with some of those concepts in terms of, like, Dan Sullivan, the author, one of his first book was Do Not How, right, which is all about finding the right people to put in the right positions in your business so you ultimately free your time up. You said, imagine being shackled to the business. Yeah, that's a reality for so many contractors. Mm-hmm. That's a reality even for, obviously our dad here, he's been doing this for 27 years. Yeah. And we've talked for years about getting him in a position, his retirement view. And we want that for him. He wants that, but we're kind of trying to also encourage, like, hey, we're going to help get you in a place where you can feel comfortable letting go of that mind, letting go of some of the things that you still have your hands in, so that you can ultimately allow this business to serve you in the way that you've served it for so long. And again, talking to contracts all over the country, like, it's this typical status quo. Yeah. So there's the who, not how aspect. You've talked about how can you contribute. That's the, like, unique ability that Dan talks about. Everybody has a unique ability. And when you bring people into your organization to cover things that are, what they would call not your core 20%, but your 80% that's taken away from it, that you're giving them the responsibilities that they love and that they're good at, and you're not. So you can focus on your core aspect, right? So even talking about that hiring process, some of those interesting answers you get, but you hear that person that comes in and says, oh, I can do this for you. Now, that's the thing I hate doing. Perfect. That's my guy. Yeah. Or that's my girl, right? So I think a big part of why I really wanted you on for this episode, because ultimately what we want to talk about is the freedom of your time and what protecting your time means as a entrepreneur, as a contractor. I mentioned you're somebody who embodies that. And so I remember years back when I was in my 2X mindset, I thought, man, Evan's going to Colombia for a week. Doesn't he got a business to be running?
Nathan, that's where I'm not going for a while. Okay. No, like, you're leaving again? No, sorry.
But so getting back into kind of the principles of the book, and why I think, you embody it so well, is you've put people in place to where you have what they call a self-running company, right? You're still leading the vision. You're still setting the standard. You're still ultimately at the core of what it means for Superior Built to be Superior Built. But you have coverage. You don't have to be the one pushing everything forward, or even a single area necessarily. Obviously, you're available, but we talk about the importance of carving time out to fill your own cup up, to restore, rejuvenate, and to ultimately spark creativity and new ideas. And that's so hard when your phone's getting blown up. You're doing text messages about the job until 11 p.m. It eats at you, and as you said, like, you're shackled to the business and you're defeated. Yeah. And so I guess talk a little bit about some of the mental benefits, or just some of the even physical benefits of having the ability to carve that time out, take that time, and what it means for the business too.
I think one thing that's kind of interesting that most people don't look at it from this perspective, but you can put more into your business when you're putting less into your business. And that's something I came to realize also. When you're overexerting yourself and spreading yourself too thin, sometimes you end up actually making less of an impact in your business, versus when you get a chance to work on your business and not in your business, that's when things begin to scale, and they scale easier, because you can put your head down and just pound your head against the wall and, like, I'm going to grow this. I'm going to handle it all. And, you talked about letting go. You're refusing to let go because you're like, the only way this is going to happen is if I handle it, and that's a big misconception. So I think being less hands-off in the day-to-day and look at it like you're playing chess and not checkers with your business. I use this analogy like NFL organizations, and how could you imagine if the owner was the GM and the quarterback and the defensive line and the O-line and all that stuff, would be a very good football team,
No.
right? The owner's job.
Imagine Jerry Jones
Oh,
on all lines.
yeah, he's probably a prime example of what owners should not do. He's probably a little too involved in, or the McCaskies, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Let's
Hey,
go down that road.
we got Bear Johnson, all right?
We're on the up and up now. Okay, the Bears are coming, but yeah, you know, looking at from that role, identifying what positions are most instrumental to your business, and then recruiting the best talent for those positions. And that comes in time. I get it. When you start a new branch, yeah, you can't take on 3-4 salaries. So you are naturally going to have to do a little bit more in the beginning. But then as you grow, you just always have to keep, that's what you're working toward. You know, you're not just like, this is how this is going to continue moving forward. Just me and one guy, and we're just going to do it all. Because then you hit that glass ceiling, and it's like you're bumping your head against it. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing X amount of milling every year, and I'm inching up. And that's kind of the glass ceiling, because you look at it like growth. Yeah, I did 3 million last year, and this year did 3.8. To me, that's not the kind of growth that you want. But that probably was overexerting yourself to even get just that minimal growth versus the concept of like the 10x is easier than 2x. You know, you're building a team, you're building a system, you're building a process, and then you're letting that well-oiled machine run itself. And you as the owner, you're just maintenance it, right? Maintenance the machine.
Course correcting.
Course correcting, you know, so, yep.
And I think part of the reason, because this isn't a unique issue to roofing by any means, but it is prevalent. And I think part of the reason is the way that these companies are typically started, and who starts a roofing company, and also to get that traction. So it's usually either somebody who's been on roofs their whole life, they're the craftsman, or they were a really good salesperson. And they're the ones who will typically start the roof. And so it's your perspective is, we're going to be successful because I know how to roof really well, or we're going to be really successful because I know how to sell really well. But then what happens when you get to that point where you have enough traction to make these decisions, you have enough momentum, and now you've got to let go of that thing that you've kind of leaned on in your justification. It's like, well, if I'm not a lead salesperson, or if I'm not on every job site, make sure the quality control, like, what am I going to do? Right. It's not just, can I trust folks, but what am I going to do? What's my purpose here? But you also have to realize, when you bring folks on into your business, you assume that leadership position, and folks are looking to you to set the tone, establish standards, maintain those standards, and really paint a picture of what their life can be like working at your organization. That's a role that you almost have to get comfortable with in order to keep your ceiling growing in that way that you're talking about, and not just be inching it forward. You have to basically take on a new role. You almost take on a whole new identity. And that's literally how they describe it in the book, is that your identity has to continue to evolve as your business grows.
And like trusting the process. I know you hear that a million times in many different contexts, but it is true to trust the process. Like you see that vision and you believe in it to the point where it's going to work eventually. Your first hire might not be the right hire. Your second hire might not be the best. Like, you learn as you go. Like, okay, that was not the right hire because of this, and this. And once you identify what personality traits make the right person for that position, then as you interview, you pay attention to things you weren't paying attention to before. So like everything, there's a little bit of learning curve to it, but you still trust like that process and that system that you have in your mind, that this is how I'm going to scale my business easier, because not every hire that I had was like, boom, rock star hire. We went through a few different hires that they didn't work out, but every step, every failure was, we're learning, we're failing forward. And, that's instrumental.